All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at how a kid from a small, working-class town on the north coast of Puerto Rico completely rewrote the rulebook for global pop stardom. We are exploring the career of Benito Antonio Martinez Ocasio, better known to the world as Bad Bunny. But listen, this isn't just a story about catchy music or breaking streaming records. It is an absolute masterclass in challenging entrenched industry norms.
Seriously, think about it for a second. How exactly does Benito go from bagging groceries in his hometown of Vega Baja to literally headlining the Super Bowl, and doing it all without ever moving to LA, without softening his accent, and without singing in English just to appease the mainstream market? The music business has always insisted that if you want to conquer the world, you have to change to fit it. Well, Bad Bunny proved that absolutely 100% wrong.
The core of his entire historic rise comes down to one brilliant concept: scale without assimilation. Conventional wisdom used to dictate that if you were an artist from outside the English-speaking world, you had to shed your local identity to reach the masses. But Benito, he did the exact opposite. He kept his Puerto Rican Spanish heavy on the local slang. He kept his island identity. He kept his weirdness, and he basically just expected the rest of the planet to catch up and come to him. You see, the old crossover model was effectively a translation trap. It demanded that Latin artists make English-language records and project this safe, watered-down image just to climb the American charts. He totally tore up that playbook. He proved once and for all that crossing over doesn't have to mean crossing out who you are. You can absolutely go global by collaborating as a peer on your own linguistic turf, rather than twisting yourself to fit someone else's mold.
So let's track this journey, starting with Section 1, from SoundCloud to stardom. A super interesting detail that often flies under the radar is his university background. He actually studied audio-visual communication at the University of Puerto Rico at Arecibo. So from day one, he was treating his image and his videos as serious art forms. And honestly, it is dizzying to see how fast things moved once he applied those skills. Like in 2016, he's a supermarket bagger making beats on a laptop and throwing them on SoundCloud. By late 2016, his track Soy Peor completely blows up. Cut to 2018, the biggest English-speaking stars on Earth are flocking to him. He's on Cardi B's I Like It, and he incredibly gets Drake to sing in Spanish on his track Mia. He literally flipped the industry's center of gravity. The mainstream had to adapt to him.
Which brings us to Section 2, the era of dares.
Looking at his incredible run of studio albums from 2018 to 2022, you realize these weren't just standard music drops. They were massive, escalating bets that totally defied commercial logic. Whenever he had the world's full attention, he took a sharp left turn. On his debut, X100 Prey, he refused to be boxed in as just a Latin trap artist, bringing in all these alt and pop punk vibes. Then, instead of chasing standard pop, he drops YHLQMDLG, which is this pure love letter to old-school reggaeton, and it shoots to number 2 on the charts. Next thing you know, he pivots into experimental rock with El Último Tour del Mundo, making history as the first all-Spanish album to hit number 1 on the Billboard 200. And finally, boom, Un Verano Sin Ti drops, a massive, culturally sprawling tropical record that scores an Album of the Year Grammy nod. Every single time he pivoted, the audience followed him right to the top. And we absolutely have to talk about 2020. During the pandemic lockdowns, while the live music industry was totally paralyzed, his career actually sped up. Because he'd been building this tight, direct digital connection with his fans since those early SoundCloud days, he was already future-proofed. He didn't need traditional promo tours. He dropped 3 massive projects in a single calendar year, basically flooding a lockdown world with his music and cementing himself as the most streamed artist on the planet.
All right, moving on to Section 3, rewriting the cultural rules.
He didn't just change the business side of things. He systematically dismantled the rigid, unspoken rules of his own genre. Historically, Latin trap and reggaeton have been defined by this very tough machismo. And yet, here comes the biggest, most successful artist in the scene, casually rocking skirts on magazine covers, painting his nails, and showing up as an overt LGBTQ+ ally. He injected deep, raw, emotional vulnerability into his lyrics, and by completely refusing to apologize for any of it, he made freedom and fluidity look so much cooler than conformity. He totally expanded the template for what a male artist in his culture was allowed to be.
Then there's the politics. The standard global pop playbook, it tells you to stay quiet, protect the brand, and avoid alienating any part of your audience. Bad Bunny tossed that playbook out the window. He used massive global hits, like the song El Apagón, to make literal documentary-style videos exposing gentrification and power grid failures in Puerto Rico. In 2019, he even hit pause on his exploding career to physically join the street protests in San Juan that eventually ousted the island's governor. No matter how big he got, he always kept the focus right on his home.
He also expanded his empire into wildly different spaces, but, and this is key, he did it with genuine passion, not just some calculated brand strategy. He threw himself headfirst into professional wrestling, training for and wrestling in a highly acclaimed match at WrestleMania. I mean, who does that? He took on serious acting roles in huge Hollywood movies like Bullet Train. He became a high fashion muse. He took risks that could have easily ended in ridicule, but they worked out perfectly because of his total, multidimensional authenticity.
Which sets the stage perfectly for Section 4, the ultimate vindication, looking at 2025 and 2026.
All of those cultural bets culminated in some truly historic milestones. Take a look at this number, hundreds of millions of dollars. That is the estimated economic impact pumped straight into Puerto Rico's economy during his massive 31-show residency in San Juan in the summer of 2025. Instead of kicking off a world tour in the usual global capitals, he titled the residency, "I Don't Want to Leave Here," and literally forced the world to come to his backyard. He used his immense fame to pour value directly into his home island, turning a concert series into a true national event. Right after that residency, he launched a massive global stadium tour hitting Latin America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. But there was one buried deliberate omission. He skipped the United States entirely. He mentioned that American fans had already had plenty of chances to see him, but he also prioritized fan safety over the climate surrounding immigration enforcement at the time. Whatever you think of the politics, from a pure business perspective, it is wild. He willingly walked away from one of the most lucrative touring markets on Earth simply to put his community and his values above maximum profit.
And then came the ultimate industry validation. In early 2026, his 2025 album, Debí Tirar Más Fotos, achieved the absolute unthinkable. It won the Grammy for Album of the Year. And this wasn't just any pop record. This album was deeply rooted in traditional Puerto Rican folk sounds like plena and bomba. It made history as the very first fully Spanish-language album to win American music's most prestigious, all-genre top prize. Just incredible.
And if that wasn't enough, literally a week after that historic Grammy win, he commanded the Super Bowl LX halftime show. Performing entirely in Spanish, he became the first solo male Latin artist to headline the event. The symbolism here is just off the charts. After deliberately skipping the US on his tour, he goes and conquers the absolute peak of American cultural attention, but he does it entirely on his own terms.
When you look at his legacy, Bad Bunny completely expanded the template for what a global pop star can be. Like this quote perfectly captures, he proved you do not have to assimilate to win. You really don't. He didn't subtract his language, his weirdness, or his roots just to fit into some outdated industry mold. He kept all of it, and the world had to adjust to him. He was unapologetically himself from day one.
So that leaves us with this final, really important question. If the biggest artists in the world won by being unapologetically local, what rules are you still following that you just don't need to? He defied the crossover model, rewrote the rules of masculinity in his genre, and prioritized his values over standard business logic. Think about what this means for you. What parts of your own identity or your own big ideas are you watering down just to chase success when they might actually be your greatest superpower? Something to think about. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.